Well, the world is a dumpster fire, and nothing here makes sense. And you're vacillate between crippling fear and constant self-defense. And nothing's right and nothing's good, and you're paralyzed with grief. Don't kill yourself, just have a cup of coffee.
Welcome to Coffee Over Suicide, the dramedy podcast about mental illness and choosing life over death, one cup of coffee at a time. I'm your host, Chris Parker Howard. And today on the show, we have got veteran, musician, all-around badass guy, Don Zuzula. And we're going to get into that in a minute. I want to talk about a couple of things right up at the top before we get into this conversation. The first thing being, I'm recording this a few days before this comes out because I'm seeing my son for the first time in 2 years. Picking him up today, leaving for the airport pretty much as soon as I get this done. It is kind of strange the way that we take face-to-face for granted. There's something about the way people affect us differently when they're around us versus just sort of digitally, ethereally out there. And that got me to thinking about some other things. Sort of the way that we kind of treat each other so poorly in digital spaces because we treat each other like we're nothing more than information. And we treat each other like everything is as simple as a thing we like or don't like. Like everyone is only as good as their worst quality. There's no room for empathy for someone who has things to learn. There's no room for growth in a lot of spaces. You know, one of the things that I see that I've been seeing more often is I've been seeing this thing where people will say, it is not my job to be your educator. And yeah, that's true. But I also think that it might behoove you to think about having a little empathy for that person who doesn't have an educator. We expect people to be better, but we expect them to do it all on their own. I mean, you didn't do it on your own. I didn't do it on my own, certainly. I did it with the help and the patience of people that were willing to take a minute and correct me when I was wrong. And I'm not saying that's everybody's duty, but I am saying that I think that it's worthwhile if you can manage it to be a source of light and help where it makes sense. So that's what I got. That's what I got right up top, and I hope that I hope that that's helpful to somebody, because I really want to feel like I'm being a better version of myself, and by being a better version of myself, I can maybe help other people be a better version of themselves. I'm not sure if that's how that works, but there are worse targets to try to hit, you know what I mean? So, with that in mind, let's go out into the world and just try to be kind to each other as best we can. Let's talk to Don. See what he thinks. as any. I'm actually honestly kind of surprised that you're here, considering you've got a respiratory condition at the moment, I guess you could say.
I soldier on. No matter what, you do what you can. So it's, I don't, as long as I'm up and out of bed, I might as well be doing something.
Yeah.
It is what it is. Like, the house needs to be taken care of. The kids need to be taken care of. Other things need to be taken care of. And I'd be bored out of my mind not doing anything. So
right.
I tried just laying in bed, and it's not for me. So I'm glad to be here. Really, I am.
Excellent. So, I mean, you said that you soldier on. There's a whole lot of things to open up with. But let's go back really, really far, because I've known you for a really long time. Especially as like a couple of introverts who pretend to be extroverts by going out and playing in bands. I think that there's a lot of depths to be mined there. But take me back even further. Were you born in the Saginaw Bay City area?
Yeah. I was born a poor child at the Saginaw General Hospital. I was initially I grew up in the Bridgeport area. Went to school there, and up through 5th grade. And then moved out to Midland because my dad had various jobs. He worked at St. Mary's for a while as a maintenance man, and then he got a good job out at the power plant in Midland.
Yeah.
And so then we moved on up and lived a much better existence than we were, living in a glorified trailer park area. And things were a lot better for us living out in Midland for a while. And then, I was moved back to the area after my military service. I didn't move back to the Saginaw area. I moved to the Bay City area, but my brother always stayed out in that area. We always had contacts and friends in the Saginaw and in the Midland area, Bay City area, because that's where I live now, but just all around. So I guess I'm from the Tri-Cities proper.
Well, tell me a little bit about that, because I mean, the interactions that I've had with people that especially people of a certain kind of mindset that go into the military, like, the kind of punk rock kind of people, there's a handful of reasons for that. And a lot of people are running to something or from something, or just looking for some direction. Like my brother was completely just shiftless, had no direction whatsoever. But he was, I think, running away from something. I'm going to let that be his story. But he was running away from something. But you, I have a feeling you were running face first into something.
My military service worked kind of like this. When I was a kid, really young, all the way till the time I got older, the only thing I wanted to do was be in the military. And my dad always tried to steer me towards, if you're going to go do something where you'll be someone, go be an engineer, go be something that will get you a real good job, because and so I always wanted to join the Navy and work on, nuclear propulsion systems or something. That's what my dream always was when I was young. And that's what I would tell people. And then when I was a teenager, my dad died. And my entire family were a military family, going back to my great-great-grandparents. And once my dad's family kind of got a hold of me, they put this hero seed into my head. And then that flipped from, what my dad was telling me, because your influential adults change, then the messaging changes. And so I switched from wanting to do that to I up and joined the Army and ended up in the combat arms, and I was an artilleryman, and at least the recruiters were smart enough to try to at least shape that towards what my dad wanted, because they saw my test scores and they were like, well, you're not going to be an infantryman with a 95 GT,
Yeah.
or with a 95 ASVAB and a 125 GT score. Those are ridiculously high test scores. So they made me a cannon fire direction specialist, and that was a guy who does literal trigonometry to aim cannons from 25 miles away.
Yeah.
And so it was not a job I enjoyed. It's not a job that I wanted. Recruiters are going to lie to you to get you to do what they wanted, and it was a quota that they had to make. They had to find certain people who could do that job and were willing to and would pass that school, and I was one of those people, and they got their hooks into me. And I did that for a couple of years, and I hated it. And then I turned around. I went to combat on that job, but I didn't do that job when I went over there, because everybody who joins as combat arms, which is like infantry, artillery, armor, which is like tankers, if they don't need you to ride in a tank, if they don't need you to fire artillery, they'll just stick a rifle in your hand and go, congratulations, you're an infantryman now, even if you don't know what the hell you're doing. And they'll stick you on a street corner, they'll stick you kicking on doors, and you're a bullet stopper now, which is what they ended up doing to us, because everybody needs bullet stoppers, and that's an easy job to do. It's not easy job to do. You have to be well trained to do it. And so
it's an easy job to get someone else to do.
Yeah, they stuck us with low skill bullet stopper duty, not the high skill, stuff. Escort missions and other things that they couldn't task high skilled infantrymen to be doing. And so in the end, when it was time for me to get out, they looked at me and they went, oh yeah, because I got stuck on that stop loss program too, because they overextended my tour. I didn't like my job. I was like, okay, I'm just going to get out. I don't want to do this anymore. This was my lifelong dream, and now I don't like it. I want to get out. And then when it was time to get out, they were like, oh, you're under the stop loss program and you're in a vital MOS. So you're going to get out, and then you're going to get a letter that says it's time to come back in right away. And I was like, so what can I do about that? And they're like, well, you can join the National Guard. And I'm like, well, if I join the National Guard, do I have to do the same job? They're like, oh, no, you can do any job you want in the National Guard. And I'm like, okay. So I joined the National Guard and decided to become a medic, because that's what I actually wanted to do. And so now, after my first tour, I had a good career in medicine. I enjoyed medicine, and I worked at the hospital in Saginaw, St. Mary's, as a emergency department technician. Enjoyed that for quite a while. Had EMT license, and I worked helping people, saving lives. Worked with the Michigan State Medical Command. I taught soldiers combat lifesaver skills. I really enjoyed that job and did it for just about as long as I could, until my personal issues that I had contracted during my military service had caught up with me, and then I kind of fell apart and crumbled, and now I am a permanent 100% disabled veteran because of things that had caught up with me eventually. Did put me off of work, put me off of that, and put me out of military service. So that's how my military career went.
Well, let me ask you about this, if I can. Because the thing that I do hear from a lot of people is that there are two things that are on a collision course with each other when you're deployed out, and those things being boredom and time in your own head, which can manifest in so many different ways. And so when you have all of that free time over there in the heat, and you're a bullet stopper, as you say, like what kind of things go through your head on the regular basis? Because I have to imagine that your mind is working overtime because there's nothing else to do.
You think a lot about home. You don't think a lot about stuff like that. You think a lot about your family. You think about a lot about how your friends that are standing around. You spend a lot of time smoking cigarettes and bullshitting with the guys next to you. You spend most of your time trying not to get in your head and trying not to feel like things are unfair. That's what you're trying to do. And then when bad things happen, you try your best. You don't try your best. Bad things happen, and then you have like an instantaneous meltdown, like existential crises. You fall apart, and then you got to rely on the people around you to keep you from falling apart. And almost all of military service, I know people like always complain. Like the big thing that I always hear about is like, oh, I could never join the military because when a drill sergeant's yelling and screaming in my face, I would just yell right back at him. The reason why the drill sergeants are always yelling and screaming in your face at the beginning of basic training is because they're preparing you for the stresses and strains of combat. Yeah. And they're preparing you for mental breakdowns. They're preparing you for what's going to happen to you when you're downrange and all of the I don't know. I'm trying not to swear here because I don't know.
You can say whatever you want.
Oh yeah, that's right. I remember that Facebook post. Yeah, they're preparing you for the shit storms that are going to come, because you're going to have to rely on the people around you to prop you up mentally and emotionally, and you're not necessarily going to be able to rely on yourself. And that's the thing, is that you're trying to keep yourself together. That's 99% of what it is it's just a mental game, and they're trying to prepare you to be mentally tough. Yeah. And that's all it is. And so really the guys who are like, oh, I would punch a drill sergeant. It's like, well, you're not military tough anyway. You think that you're tough because you would punch a drill sergeant, but you're just a weakling. And so you're exactly the type of person that they don't want around.
Yeah. I mean, you got to be Swayze about that shit. You've got to be, it's time to be nice until it's time to not be nice.
Right. Well, it's
self-control.
It's 100% really self-control, and it's 100% about professionalism all the time. And that's the thing. Like, even when you're crumbling, even when you're falling apart, even when you feel like you want to walk up to the top of the building and walk off of it, like, you can't, because there's 12 other guys in your squad who need you no matter what. It's not about you, it's about them. And so that's the thing that you think about all the time. Like, it's not about me. None of this is about me. I got family back home and I want to be with them. But if I do something about this right now, if I try to go home to them right now, it's not about me. It's about leaving this hole in my team. It's a weird thing that you spend all your time being prepared for. And so, I mean, you were talking about punk rockers and things like that joining. I joined because my entire family had joined, and I just kind of liked punk rock music before. I didn't have a direction. I didn't know where I was going. I had not been doing well in college. I had been struggling with my dad dying. I didn't have anything else to do. And so I just made a snap decision and up and joined the military because I needed a job. I wanted to do this. That's what my family did. And it ultimately, I mean, it changed my opinions on a lot of things. It opened my eyes to how America works, but it grew me up. It hardened my resolve in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And it changed the way that I operate in the best ways. So I don't have any regrets, even though a lot of bad things happened to me and I'm permanently broken.
Yeah.
If I didn't do what I did back then, didn't go through all the things that I had, I wouldn't have everything that I have now. And I wouldn't be prepared to go through all of the things that I went through since then. So,
yeah.
You know, I don't have any regrets about it. I'm not mad about it. And I've had a lot of really good things. I don't think my band would have done nearly as well if I hadn't been prepared mentally and emotionally to do the things that I need to do. I definitely wouldn't have my kids. I wouldn't have my wife. I wouldn't have this house. I wouldn't have anything. So yeah, like,
so take me in that direction actually, because you get back, your service ends, you get back. At what point do you decide that you're going to start playing music?
Right away. Pretty much immediately from when I got back, I moved in with my brother, and he and I had always played together. Like, we came home, and I moved into a house with him right away and started going to college because I thought, this is the logical, smart choice for me to do with my life. You know, I'm 25 years old, and I'm going to live with a bunch of college students and just drink the rest of my life away. And I didn't do so well my first couple semesters because I was living with immature young kids.
Right.
We started playing in a cover band, and it was a cover band for the first couple of years, and it wasn't great. And we didn't play a lot of gigs out, but we did play a few, and mostly private parties. And we used to play the Cass River Yacht Club in Bridgeport a lot. And that's a bar band. That's just a straight up bar band. That's gross.
Yeah.
So, but you know, it's.
I've paid my dues on that stuff too, man. I mean, being the bar band for the night, man. Sometimes I would much rather be playing my own songs to tables and ashtrays.
We did that for a while, and then in 2007, I was in the National Guard, and I went down to San Antonio for 6 months. And when I came back from San Antonio, every night while I was in San Antonio, I was hanging out at this Irish pub because that's what I was doing.
Yeah.
And there was a guy who played the Irish pub, and to basically shirk his own responsibilities, he would hand me his guitar and walk away and let me play an entire set of Irish music. And I only knew probably 10 songs, but by the time I left, I could play everything that he knew.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'd known these songs. I'd been listening to the Pogues and Dropkick Murphys and a lot, you know, the Dubliners for years. But by the time I left, I was playing 3 full sets. And so when I came home from San Antonio, I told my brother, I'm like, this is what we're doing. We're gonna do this Pogues tribute band. So it's still a cover band. I'm like, we're gonna do a different cover band, and so that's what the Tosspints started as. I was gonna do a Pogues tribute band, and that's why we even picked the name of a Pogues song for our band. And that just fell apart right away because we started writing music, and it was we'd been writing music since we were kids, but we just hadn't been playing music that we'd written since probably the 90s.
Yeah.
Because we'd never really had a vehicle for doing it. We weren't in that music scene. We were in the other music scene. That wasn't, I mean, because you know that there's 2 distinctively different music scenes.
Yeah.
There's the cover music scene, and those bands they're working bands and they make a good
Yeah.
deal of money. And then there's the bands who make their own music, and they make the door deal, and
Yeah.
they write their own music, and they have, they stand around and they jerk each other off playing for each other, and you get a pitcher of beer and you split the $50 that you guys made at the door for
Right.
each other's girlfriends paying cover. And that's we weren't ever part of that, and we had to figure out how to get into that. And once we did, it took us for from about 2007 to 2008 before we were actually into that, and we were kind of a hot mess even getting into it. And it was a while before we'd even figured that out. And I think
But see, I think you did have a distinct advantage by coming from the cover band area, because
for sure.
you will build some serious chops learning the songs that were written by professional musicians, even if those songs are terrible in a lot of cases. You'll get good
It's
if
not
you play
just
enough.
that, but I learned a lot more about business than other musicians did. And so I'm keenly aware of the fact that we've always been paid more and better than other original bands.
Mm-hmm.
And that I've always been better at negotiating with bar owners, and that's been a leg up. But then at the same time, I've always had a better ethic, like stage ethic, putting on a better show, putting on a clean show. Like this is how things are going to be. This is what our show is. This is what the crowd deserves. And like, I'm not saying that other bands don't have that, but you can definitely tell that there are some, especially newer bands, that get up there and, they spend 2 minutes in between songs trying to figure out what they're going to play next. And they'll take 30 seconds to tune. And then, they have conversations on stage, and you can't do those things. Like there's a level of quality and entertainment that a bar owner is going to expect,
Mm-hmm.
that
And that an audience will expect.
that places that allow new up and coming original bands will just tolerate from that kind of behavior from those guys, because they're new, they don't understand, they'll get it eventually. And we never had that ever. And so it was like right away we moved up. And so
So the band is doing well. You start getting yourself you start getting yourselves together. You're booking better shows, and you've been doing this for probably a couple of years at this point, when things start getting pretty good for you guys. At what point does the trauma from your past start breaking into your current reality?
That, I don't know. I wouldn't dare say that happens until probably after my kid is born, my first kid. I graduate college and I get a real job, and I'm trying to juggle household, band, my kid, and I'm doing well at all these things. And that's, at that point, excuse me.
Of course.
At that point, we had been playing major festivals. I'm trying to juggle back and forth. My wife's working second shift and I'm working first shift. And she comes and drops my daughter off every day at 3 p.m. right as she's on her way to work and I'm on my way home. And most nights she gets home and I'm running out the door to go play somewhere because I'm playing acoustic 2-3 nights a week. Plus I'm playing weekends with the band and we're traveling, going places. We've been playing a lot of major festivals around the state and out of state. We've been playing with the Tosspints since around 2010, 2011. It was around 2011. And I just run out of gas, and my work isn't suffering. The band isn't suffering. The band is getting bigger. Everything is getting bigger. I'm just pouring myself in more and more. And I had a friend who was a Marine Corps veteran, and his wife, and she works for a nonprofit, and she's an advocate for veterans. And they just showed up to my door one day, and they're just like, "You have post-traumatic stress disorder." And I'm like, I don't think I do. I think I'd know if I had that. And they're like, "No, because what we do is we..." Sorry. I'm working on this here.
Hey,
they're like, yeah,
you know,
I know,
this is not to put too much of a pause on your story here, but this is classic you powering through a rough situation because that's what you've got to do. So I feel like people hearing you cough through your COVID.
Yeah, I know.
I think there's something pretty apt about that, but
been holding it back for a while. Anyway,
continue.
Anyway, they tell me it's like, well, we've been helping veterans go through the VA's process on getting transitioned in, and we know you really well. I've been friends with her since high school, and I'd worked with him at the hospital when I worked over there, and it was and they were like, you have all the classic symptoms, and it's like, and you're working yourself to death.
Yeah.
And you're drinking, you have all these other issues, you're self-medicating, you're coping with your issues with overworking yourself. And they're like you don't sleep ever. They're like, you literally don't sleep. You're up until 4 or 5 in the morning, you fall asleep, you're up at 6:30, like you sleep an hour and a half a night, if that. They're like, this is all normal post-traumatic stress for a veteran. They're like, we'd like you to come with us to the hospital. We'll meet with a transition officer and see if you can get checked out for post-traumatic stress disorder. And it's like, it doesn't hurt you. Nothing is gonna, harm your life if you do this. And like, we want you to just try. And I was like, I'll try just for you guys because I love you and I care about you. And so I was doing it for them. And then when I did, I went and got checked out. They were pretty... the hospital was really good. The transition officer was really nice. They got me in over there, and it was a good program that they had, where the officer, he was a really cool guy, and he walked me through every part of the process. He got me into therapists, and he got me in to see a psychiatrist right away. It's not everything that they make the VA out to be. Like, you just can't go. They reject you for care. I suppose if you go in willingly and under the correct circumstances, that this is how it is. If you go in under emergent circumstances, just demanding to see someone right away, they still don't turn you away. But I definitely couldn't have gotten into inpatient care that day.
Yeah.
And that's the problem, is like, they just don't have beds for everybody to do inpatient care constantly.
Right. I mean, from everything that people see, it's like the money seems to be on the other end of the spectrum for veterans.
So So yeah, and then from that point to me being put off of work was really quick, because I had had about 2-3 appointments before. Between that and maybe 2 other appointments later, I was on a lot of meds, because the VA just loves to throw you on meds. And then I had a bad doctor who didn't like to mess around, and she ended up putting me on antipsychotics. I don't know if anybody's ever been through psychiatrists before, but sometimes if you're prone to anxiety attacks and things like that, some doctors just are not good, and they'll go heavy right away. And once they put me on antipsychotics for my anxiety and panic attacks and other things, like throwing me on really heavy benzodiazepines and antipsychotics, that put me right off of work. And I got off of them as quick as I got on them, because I hated it. And now I got it in my medical records that I won't take benzodiazepines, I won't take narcotics, I won't take anything like that. I'd rather die on the side of the road than feel like I'm not myself. Yeah. But I changed doctors. My care is up to me. I'm sound of mind, and I'm not going to let somebody take my choices away like that again. But that put me off of work, and they rated me as unemployable because of the meds that they put me on, and the way that I have. It turns out that I also have a traumatic brain injury. I was in a track vehicle rollover accident at one point, and so I have a lot of issues with my back, my neck, some other joint issues. I have hearing issues from firing cannons, and all of that stacks up to 100% disability. And so, it was a big blow that, to go from finished my degree, working, doing really well at work, had my own office, had people underneath of me. I was, commercial artist doing, front-end user design for software and stuff like that, and felt, I didn't necessarily like what I was doing. I didn't like the industry, or the part of the industry that I was working in, but I liked what I was doing. Yeah. So I had potential to go somewhere else and work so that, I was looking for somewhere else to do that. And I still do some commercial art right now. I'm making album covers. I just made one for Andy Reid. Yeah. And I like making art. And so that was something that I was kind of hopeful for, looking forward to doing, and I still can. Being unemployable doesn't mean that I can't work. It just means I can't work gainfully full time. So I can still be a musician. I can make music. They don't tell you that you can't be productive. They tell you that you can't have a breadwinning full time job, because they don't want you breaking yourself. They put a limit on it. It's you can't work more than 20 hours a week, or a certain dollar amount a month. I've never really looked into it, never hit it, because right now my wife works in human resources and makes more money than I need to care about, and I get a disability pension from the military. So I work when I want, and I make music and art, and we do fine.
And does that keep you relatively calm? Because there's two different things that could be at play here. I know how much of a workaholic you are, and how much you're sort of fighting these other tendencies. So to have to sit back and do
No.
things that might be a little more relaxing?
There's a solid answer to that, and it's no. So like, I'm on the Department of Veterans Affairs, Veterans and Families Advisory Council. I serve on the board of directors for a nonprofit here in Bay City. I have a workshop in my basement where I make art and big wood shop down there.
Yeah,
And I'm
guitars
constantly
and
working.
tables.
Plus, I have a music studio here in my house, and I have an art studio here. So like, I've taken up mountain biking recently. I'm probably working at least. Well, plus I have 3 children, and
Yeah.
I'm solely in charge of their care. I probably work easily as much, if not more than when. Yeah. Plus, I have a Victorian home, 130-year-old Victorian home, and try
Right.
taking care of one of these.
Yeah. So
It's
you found a loophole. You're like, they tell you that you need to relax. You're like, fuck that. I'll show you what I'll do with my time.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah, and I'm getting in shape too. I've poured easily 3 hours a day into working out. I mean,
Yeah.
except for this last couple of weeks where I'm sick, but that's been murder. But yeah, it's a whole thing on its own. Like, you find something to do when they tell you can't do it. And now I'm back in school because now that all 3 of my kids are in school, like, I can petition to go back to work and, get off of unemployability. And if not, then I'll just work within that 20 hours that they tell me.
Yeah.
So, but I want to do things, especially after COVID hit. Like, I was really upset that I don't work in medicine anymore. And more with all of the things that are going on, the earthquakes in Haiti and all these other things. There's a bunch of disaster relief organizations that are sending emails looking for EMTs and former military medics to go man field hospitals. And I just don't have my certification anymore. And I'd love to go do stuff like that. That's humanitarian work. And it would make me feel very wanted, relevant,
Yeah.
Useful. That's the kind of stuff that I wanted to do with my life. And so, I'm going to go back to school I am back in school right now. I'm going to work on, doing something about that. So
Do you not feel useful now with the things that you're doing now?
I don't feel like I am as useful as I could be with the mind that I have. If that makes any sense. I don't want it to
No,
sound...
it does.
I don't want it,
It
I don't want
really
it to sound
does.
conceited, because I feel like that sounds like self-absorbed.
No,
I'm
no,
not.
I don't think it does. I think that, maybe someone who wasn't paying attention might take it that way. But otherwise, I mean, you have to have a level of self-awareness about yourself in order to grow or get anything done. Or, I mean, really, once you reach a certain point where you recognize these are my strengths and this is how I can help, if you recognize that you're not using those strengths to help, that can be a burden on you.
Yeah, it's hard to just sit and read books, watch videos all day, and then not have a vessel to apply knowledge.
Yeah.
And so that's where I am with that. Like, I want to be able to do something. And so, like, that's where the struggle or the disconnect is where,
Yeah.
I can know all that I want to know. But if I can't take that knowledge that I have sat at my computer and gained and use it to help somebody else, use it to do something gainful,
Yeah.
then why did I pursue that knowledge? why did I bother to sit and absorb it?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we have this internet and we have these computers, and they have everything in the world inside of them that we
Yeah.
can know, we can do, and we waste it on using horse dewormer for COVID.
Yeah.
You know, like the dumbest things we do with this internet, like I
Yeah.
like.
You know,
I like-
that's a really interesting thing to me, though, because the more research that I do on things, the more I recognize that I've kind of come the other way. I was sort of self-righteous and in my head for a little while, as I think maybe everybody gets about something at some point in their life. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that it can actually be really tough for a person to navigate the waters of what is true and what is not true if you're not savvy and if you're not trying. I mean, if you're just getting the information that's in front of you and it seems kind of plausible, it can actually take, in this day and age, a little more effort to vet your sources.
Well, a lot of people are going to go and gravitate towards the sources that they want to be true
Right.
before they'll take the sources that are in front of them that are the easiest. You know, Occam's razor is subjective, I would suppose. You know?
Yeah.
That's a weird thing to say, because the simplest solution is always the correct one, or is normally the correct one, but what's the simplest solution to me, and what's the simplest solution to that person?
Right. How do you draw a line to sheep drench? It's But for you in the situation that you're in, like right now, as far as your mental health is concerned, you've got kids running around, I mean, I can speak for myself. When my kids were born, I did the same thing. I kind of took an inventory and was kind of like, I don't know if I'll be good as somebody's dad if I don't try to correct some shit. Because I don't think that I'm I know that I can manage myself, through some dangerous waters, and I can get myself through some tough stuff. But I don't know if I can guide somebody else through anything. So I've got to figure this out, and I've got to figure out how to be a better version of myself than I currently am. And that was a place that you already started from, was, be all you can be. You started from a place of kind of having a foot in the door, of already knowing this is how you reconfigure yourself as a human being. But when you're in the process of doing that, but you've also got these other things going on, how do you, like, where are you at currently? Like, having been through the things that you've been through, and kind of trying to put yourself into a new situation. Like, where are you at currently, and how do you manage those things? Do you still see a therapist, or are you reading books and kind of learning your own user's manual?
With each kid, I went through this. Like I said, when Eleanor was born, my oldest,
Mm-hmm.
that's when I fell down, and I went to the VA, and I went to therapies, and I decided I was going to do this, and if I was going to do it, I'm going to do it 100%. I'm going to do it all the way, because that's who I am.
Yeah.
And so I took their meds. I followed the directions like I do, and I went to every therapy they said. I talked to the therapist. They were like, "We want you to do CPT therapy." I was like, "Okay, I'll do it." They're like, okay, we want you to do nightmare reduction therapy. It'll help you sleep. Okay, we want you to do a sleep hygiene class. It'll help you sleep. Okay. And it's like, it can't hurt me. It's just a therapy. And so I did all those. And then when, by the time I was done with that, I had actually exhausted every therapy that the VA had for me. And it was like, just the end. And so by the time my son had come around, it was just a little bit after that, it was time for me to fix myself to a point where I was at a point where I wasn't a danger. I wasn't bad. I wasn't as broken, but I was still lost. And so I needed to be in a place where I wasn't like at that time, my wife was my caregiver. They had put me on I was 100% permanently and totally disabled, but they had me on a caregiver program. So she had me there. And so when my son came along, I wanted more. I wanted more out of that. I didn't want to be dragged down, a drag on my family. So I went and got my service dog, because the same people who had gotten me into this whole thing, they'd gotten a service dog, and it had gotten my friend back to work. He had done some other things. And so I went and got my dog Harbaugh from Canines for Warriors. And when my son came around, that's what I did. And that had elevated me even further, because it had made me independent. It got me off the caregiver program. My wife wasn't watching me anymore. I was able to take care of myself, do grocery shopping, go out in public, do things on my own. It had changed a lot of things. Like, I'm not necessarily, it had taken some things off the table for me, because it's a prosthetic device. It's like having a wheelchair.
Yeah.
But and it's a placard that tells people that you're handicapped or disabled or otherly abled, whatever the proper term for that is. I don't even think about it like that anymore. But at the same time, like, I feel comfortable being out by myself, doing things alone, or with just my kids. I don't have to have my wife around. She was able to go back to college, get her master's degree, get a job, be away from the house. And so the first stage was basically taking care of myself, making sure that I was okay. The second stage was taking care of my family, making sure that they didn't need to take care of me. And then now I'm on stage 3, where my youngest was born, and she's 3, and she'll be 3, and she's off at school. And I still have regular appointments with my doctors. I'm still on what meds I need to. I'm trying to lower that number as much as possible, because I know that they're not good for me. I've lost 100 pounds in the last year. I'm taking care of my body. That's part of that's with the dog, part of that's with other things. But I've been with the dog for 3 years now. 4 years now. Jeez. And I'm going back to school because my kids are in school. I don't need that. I still check in with a psychologist. I still check in with a psychiatrist. She deals with my meds. I check in with my primary care provider constantly to make sure that my my other needs are met, that I am on meds for my body and other things like that. But
yeah,
it's basically I'm on checkup appointments and things like that. So I need it. I know I need it, and I'm not going to stop just because I'm better now. And that's, I think, a lot of people who have mental health struggles, they stop when they're feeling better.
Yeah.
They don't do continued care. And that's when, and I don't know if it's an insurance issue or if it's just I'm better now. I think that's on everything issue with us. I mean, and that's something that people need to realize, that you deserve to have this continued care and continue checking up on yourself, and it's for you.
Yeah.
Because you might have something going on and you might not know it, and you might not be capable of recognizing it. Because sometimes I do get on with my psychiatrist and she just asks a question and I can look at her and just go, I don't know. You know, she'll just ask about, you know, how have you been sleeping? And he's like, I haven't thought about that.
Yeah.
I haven't thought about that in a while. I haven't been sleeping very well, you know? And she'll just start asking about, you know, my sleeping meds. Has this been working? Have you been having nightmares? Have you been having this? Have you been having, oh, man, I haven't thought about that, you know? And that's why I continue with my appointments, even though things have been really good, you know? And instead of just making an appointment when things are bad, I keep my 6-month checkups, keep my 6-month appointments. I mean, I'm fortunate to have VA care where it's free for me, and maybe that's something that we need to explore better for ourselves. But I mean, especially if you've got continued mental health issues, it's important to keep those appointments. It's important to continue with that.
Because it's a thing where you're not done. You're never really done.
No.
You're kind of always a work in progress. I forget that all the time. I mean, you know, I've been working on my mental health and the stability of it for the better part of 20 years now. And it seems like every 5 years or so, I feel like I solve the Rubik's Cube and I can, you know, throw it in the box behind me because I figured it out. I'm done. I know what my problems are and I got through them and everything is smooth sailing from here. And that's just never the case. It's never the case. And having to check back in and come to that conclusion is incredibly humbling every single time. I went about 17 years without medication. I did a lot of work. I prided myself on that. And I would tell people all the time, if your brain's not making the right chemicals, store-bought is fine. But for me, no, not for me. Because for me, if I'm on medication, that means that I've got a problem. That means that I'm fucked up. And there's something there that needs to be fixed. It's a stigma for me, but it's fine for you. And I didn't even realize that I was doing that until it came time where I had hit a wall. And I was like, well, I'm driving down the highway with my eyes closed. That's not good. That's how did I get here? And that was just a few years ago. And it was like, okay, I'm making an appointment. I'm going to see a doctor tomorrow and we're going to figure this out. And I started taking medication again because it was like, I need something to pull me up over the bar because I'm not doing it on my own. And I started taking meds and they did their job and they ran their course and I went off of them. And then I started taking different meds. Because what are you going to do? I mean, if you need something, you need something.
Right.
But that was a tough thing to come to. And so even for you as a person who's, you know, torn yourself down and built yourself back together a handful of times now, it's like, how do you feel when you've got time alone to think about yourself?
That's all I do. As you know, firstly, congratulations for making that step, getting on the meds, and that's a hard step to take. That is the hardest step for a lot of people. And you know, the thing that most people need to understand is we got to change the way that people think about masculinity, think about weakness, because most people will immediately think that asking for any help at all is weakness. Asking for taking any meds, taking any pills, doing anything to help yourself, admitting that you're struggling at all is weakness. Men's mental health is overlooked because, feeling bad is weakness. Asking for help is weakness. Talking to somebody else is weakness. You know, and it's, you shouldn't have to struggle. You shouldn't have to suffer by yourself, and because you're afraid of being called weak, because you're not feeling well, because your brain's not making the right chemicals. Oh, fuck that. Fuck you. I'm not gonna let somebody tell me that I'm weak because I'm doing the right thing for my family, because I want to be here, because I want to see my kids grow up, because I want to see them grow up and I want to be a part of it. I want to be happy. I want to feel something when I look at them,
Yeah.
And so if they want to call me names, then that's their problem. It's not my problem. They need to explore their issues with it, and if it needs to stop, because when they're saying something like that, it's not hurting me because I'm going to keep taking my meds and I'm going to keep going in, and it's hurting somebody who's watching, who might be feeling the same way that I was feeling, and they're afraid to go to a doctor, go ask for help, go do something. That's where the problem lies. So, you and I are having this conversation. We've both taken the step and gone and gotten our pills. And the guy who's, typing in the chat, look at these weak motherfuckers taking their pills and they should just go for a walk in the woods. And it's like, well, guess what? I get on my bike every goddamn day and take a ride in the woods and see the beauty of nature. And, and it don't help. Sometimes you just need to take, uphill that makes a little bit of serotonin. Sometimes that happens, and it's because my brain doesn't do it. And and I've been to combat. I go down to the gym and I lift, and I go out to the woods on my bike and I ride down hills really fast. And it's like, it's not a thing that should be a question. And you shouldn't be making fun of somebody for doing it or saying that they're weak for those reasons. It's you don't know that person's problem. You don't know that person's struggle. You don't know what that person's going through. And when you do that and you prevent somebody else from making that step, you're an asshole.
I think that's the perfect note to end on. I could talk to you all day. I'm going to let you get to your kids, and I'm going to go get to my next cup of coffee.
Yeah.
And thanks for talking to me today, Don.
I was glad to talk to you. This was a lot of fun.
We'll have to do it again.
Yeah, I would love to. Whether over a podcast or not.
Yes. Don Zuzula, ladies and gentlemen. That was really a fantastic conversation. And, that got us to talking off air for a little bit about possibly even doing some sort of a morning coffee once a month, something like that, where it's just a group of people getting together to have coffee and conversations, kind of like a group therapy without a real therapist involved. So if that's something that you're interested in, keep an eye on the Coffee Over Suicide Facebook page and the Instagram, where I'll be trying to set all of that up to get that together. As for Don, if you want to get some more of him in your life, and I know that you do, you can go to donzazula.com and find links to the Tosspints, his solo records, and even the YouTube channel where he's got all of these daily songs that he's putting up. But until next week, don't kill yourselves out there.